This is May 9th, and this is what's growing in my garden right now. The poppies are in full bloom. Look how big that bloom is. And this is just the common poppy. And I've got a few over here on this side of the flower bed that I transplanted over here. This down here is Sweet William. It has really nice big red blooms on it once it starts blooming. Down in here, this is a plant that I let it grow to a certain extent as a green ground cover in the flower beds. And I don't know what it's called, but I call it Creeping Jenny, but it has the nice purple flowers right now that you see. And here's an iris that's just getting ready to bloom. It has nice yellow flowers on it. This is calendula that is growing from seeds it dropped last year. Where that green watering pot was, I had a flower pot full of the calendulas I started from seed. And here's a hardy lily growing right up there. And there's a hardy geraniums growing in that I planted last year from bare root. There's a lot of hardy lilies growing up in there. Look at them, those would be really pretty when they bloom. There's some catmint right there, just starting to bloom. And there's peonies, and you can see the ants opening up the flowers because the sweetness of the flower attracts the ants, and to use it to help open the flower. So the ants and the peonies depend on each other. Here's on the store shelf, this was called dianthus. I'm thinking that it's the same thing as Sweet William though. This here is Yarrow, has a nice red flower on it. This is a coneflower that will bloom later in the year. Here's some alpine strawberries I planted there for the birds. My friend had those growing in his yard and I was able to get a start of them. This is a bergamot bee balm monarda there. It's a nice wildflower. It gets a lot taller. This is a allium that I just planted last year, and it's a big. I think you can call it a bulb, but I'm not technically. I don't think it's a bulb though. But it's what it looks like. I don't know. Last of the tulips. These are the late season tulips. There's still a few of them left. And there's some more of that bee balm right there. I just transplanted it here last year, so it's just getting started. Here's the leaves of tulips after all done blooming. And I'm just pulling up some grass in there. I don't let grass grow my flower bed anymore. Then as soon as I see it, I just pull it up. When it gets tall like this, it is a lot easier to pull up. And also, if you have some mulch in your bed, it's easier to pull up. This is Solomon seal, and you can see it's blooming. And I also got a start of it from a friend a couple years back, and it's a nice. This is the variegated one. There's one that's not variegated, but the variegated one is a lot nicer looking plant, and you can see it's blooming with the bells dripping on underneath each leaf. This is the leaves of columbine, which is not blooming yet. That one there isn't anyway. But the columbine has the leaves have those rounded edges. So keep that in mind for a different place here in the flower bed. I'm going to show you something. Here's an iris a purple iris that's getting ready to bloom. And there's loosestrife growing in there that's not quite blooming yet. I like a nice natural, and some would say weedy flower bed, but this is a tall garden phlox growing there, and later in the summer they'll get very tall and bloom. There's a lot of daylilies in here, and I need to get rid of some of them because you get too many. Nothing else can grow. And there's a peony in there. That's really nice looking peony too when it starts blooming. And there's some penstemon there with the reddish leaves. And that's also a sample from the same friend that I got a couple years back. And there's some of the creeping phlox that we planted here a couple days ago. There's some iris that's not blooming. Here's some more of that globe allium that I just planted last year. In this area here, there should be some red top poker somewhere, so I hope it's there. The leaves are so much similar to everything else that it would be hard to find just the leaves. There's some more of those creeping phlox I just planted here a couple days ago. That one's just starting to bloom. And there's some more of that yarrow. It's not blooming right now. That with the green feathery leaves like that. That's yarrow. Y-A-R-R-O-W, I believe. And that's just a mixture of hardy lilies and daylilies in there. And that iris, yellow iris, just starting to bloom. This is hardy geraniums, and this one here is not blooming right now, but I have several different varieties, and you can tell this is there's some more in there. You can tell the different varieties because the leaves are slightly differently shaped. Right in there, there's some lupine that I grew way down there last year at the end of the flower bed here, and it seemed like somehow it seeded itself way up here at the other end, next to some calendula that was growing right there on the sidewalk in a flower pot last year, and it seems to have dropped seeds in the flower bed, and now they're growing. And look at all my poppies. These are poppies that have been growing here in this flower bed since the 1980s, when I planted them there and dug them up from my dad's house and planted them here, and they've been growing in this flower bed since then. They're hard to move, but I did move some to the other side of the flower bed that you saw. Poppies, I believe, are annuals, and they drop seeds, and the seeds grow in the same year, and evidently they're able to winter over. You can call that hardy annuals. And so the seedlings start growing in the spring. The seedlings that started growing last summer from seeds dropped early in the spring. These are roses I've got growing in here, and they're just starting to bloom. And I don't know if you can see the blooms in this video or not, And I've got some sedum on the ground around them. There's one that's finished blooming, and it will be making seeds in that thing, and then they'll just drop on the ground there around it. And then there's some there that haven't bloomed yet. This swing, the trumpet vine is getting out of control. It's coming up in other places, and so I'm just going to move this swing set and just start mowing this area. Because if you try and dig up anything else that's growing, you probably get a piece of trumpet vine root, and I just don't want to mess around with it. So I'm just going to start mowing this area. So everything that's growing here, I'll just be mowed. Here's another type of hardy geranium, and there you can see it's just starting to bloom. Well, we actually got quite a few of those because it's a nice, this is a plumbago right here. It blooms in the fall. Those small green leaves that are just coming up there towards up against the house. And then those are daffodils in there that are done blooming in there. And there's some poppies I was able to move from the other side of the flower bed. These are a lily of the valley. They're blooming right now. They just have the plain green leaf. And here's some astilbe. And at the other end of this flower bed, that's astilbe right there. At the other end of the flower bed, I've got some columbine that's growing right up against the astilbe. And you can't see the leaves of the columbine, but it's blooming. There's some coral bells in there, and there's some Brunnera right there. And there's a late season tulip. Look at that. And there's the pink coral bells there, with some alpine strawberries growing down in there, and the veined leaf there. Those are Brunnera macrophylla. I forget the other name, but it's got the little blue flowers growing up over the top like that. It's blooming right. It's almost done blooming. And there's kind of a purplish, pale purplish colored coral bells growing out there next on the other side of it. There, with the ostrich fern growing in the middle of it. I like ostrich ferns, but they're another thing that you have to keep under control. I need to work harder on keeping the daylilies under control. It's nice to have a few, but they can take off and just overpower everything else, because I like to have as many different things in my flower bed as possible. This is another variety of geranium, and this particular one has been growing here for probably over 20 years, and for a while it didn't get much light and didn't bloom very much. But that when I cut down that mulberry or honeysuckle bush over there, it's not quite down, most of it is, but so it started blooming this year for the first time in maybe 20 years, and it's next to this dark purple coral bells that's been there for just as long. When I started planting this flower bed, I started up against the house all the way down, and so this stuff against the house has all been here a lot longer. And there is my rhododendron, and that rhododendron bush it's over 30 years old. It's one of the first things I planted there. And look at those blooms. It blooms in the spring like this, the nice blooms. It used to bloom at the same time as the clematis down there on the arch, but I see the clematis down there on the arch isn't blooming yet. It's probably too overcrowded with too many other things. I got honeysuckle and roses and everything on that arch, and I think that things would do a lot better if I didn't have it quite so overcrowded. Of course, then there's the morning glories that grow there every year from seed that probably are the real reason that the clematis, the roses, and honeysuckle don't bloom much. So I might just take all that stuff down one of these years when I feel real energetic and just start everything over. Here's a hardy geranium that's been growing here for, you know, well over 20 years, but there's so much other stuff here. Like here is a Easter rose, Lenten rose, and it's got yellow flowers. It's actually the only Lenten rose I have. This is a big, huge hosta. I think it's called Sum and Substance. You can see how huge those leaves are. It's amazing. And then on the other side, there's a whole row of raspberries there. You can see the arch with the roses and all that stuff on it. Nothing's blooming, so I'm not going down there. I have all these ostrich ferns and clematis. I need to take some of those out. I might, not clematis, I mean hostas. I might just plant some of those Solomon seal in here. It's just a perfect place for them because it's kind of shady because of the fence. The morning sun hits the fence, and so this flower bed doesn't get any light until the sun comes up over the fence. So up against the fence doesn't get much light at all. This is more of my rhododendrons blooming there. These are English bluebells, I believe, and I planted them in here, but somehow the daylilies took over, and I'm afraid that they'll have a hard time growing in there with the daylilies, but we'll see. Maybe they can grow early enough in the year before the daylilies take over. I covered this whole area with wood chips, but it unfortunately didn't kill off the daylilies, so I know I might go back and dig them up sometime, or at least some of them. You can just go into your flower bed and dig up the things you don't want. Some of them. And over here on this honeysuckle bush, there's some tulips down in there. On the honeysuckle bush there by the beds, you can see where it's growing back up from the roots. So I need to come out and cut off those green saplings that are coming up from around the roots where I cut it off. I need to just take the whole damn thing out, because it shades this flower bed too much. Things don't grow in it. Here is a Virginia red cedar, I believe, that came from bird droppings. Because I planted some of those Virginia red cedars out back, and because they're supposed to have a lot of food for wildlife, like birds, and evidently they did, because they sat there and pooped out one of the seeds and it grew into, so it's getting about big enough now. I probably ought to dig it up and move it, because it can't be growing there up against the house like that. It's a big tree. This is my crabapple that bloomed this year for the first time. Those poor lawn chairs are getting so worn out, I need to just get rid of them. And the bleeding heart is just about done. It's growing in here with ferns, and there's some snow on the mountain down there as ground cover. That's a voracious ground cover you'd never want to get in your flower bed. If I see it other places, I dig it up right away or pull it up. But right in this one little place, I'm able to contain it right there because of the hostas that keep it under control. It doesn't seem to bother the bleeding heart. The bleeding heart seems to be doing just fine in there. And all the daffodils, there's tons of daffodils in there that kind of done blooming now for the year till next spring. But I love the bleeding heart. I should plant some more of those in other places. I usually get them bare root. I don't think that's something you start from seed. You have to buy the bare root for it, and then it's hardy, and it just comes back every year. One of the last of the tulips. Late season tulip, I guess they call it. That's a really huge one. Look how big that is. Here's that columbine. Look at that. Now it's got the astilbe growing right in there, so you can't see the columbine leaves, which are rounded. And the astilbe there has got pointed leaves. But look at the columbine flower here, how big that is. And I started those from seed out back, and where I started it out back, I keep digging them up and bringing them up here, and then it grows again next year. So, and here's this geranium beside the house. It's a hardy geranium. It's blooming really nice. It hasn't bloomed for several years next to this purple coral bells. I'm going over the best part again of my May 10th garden. I think it's important to go around and look at your garden at least once a week, although I'm trying to be out in my garden every day. But when you get familiar with all the plants and you can see all the behaviors, and if you don't like them or they're overpowering other plants, you can dig them up and put them in the compost pile. And so that's kind of what I do. You get familiar with plants, and if you see a plant that you don't like the behavior, you can just dig it up. And that's how you know what the weeds are. The weeds are the plants you don't want. Or maybe you just want a few of them. There's another geranium that I just started last year from bare root. You can get the bare root geraniums from Brex is a good place, or a lot of the other seed companies will send you catalogs with lots of plants in there. I have a few of my favorites though, usually the lower priced ones. I used to buy a lot of stuff from Junks years ago, but then they got so high priced I quit buying stuff there, I guess. I guess now I still get a few other things there. I get so many seed catalogs though. But anyway, I hope you liked my garden, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you again, and I'll keep trying to make, I'm trying to make videos every day right now. Sometimes it's kind of hard, but I'm trying to make one every day. So, and at least I do my garden tours once a week. So if you like my channel, please subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. And thanks a lot, and goodbye.